He won't always say, "I love you," the way you expect. In fact, the deepest kind of love often hides in the most unexpected words. Phrases so simple, so ordinary, you'd never realize they're his heart speaking. But if you know what to listen for, you'll hear everything. Because when a man loves a woman madly, he says things no one else recognizes. But once you do, you'll never miss them again. Most women have been conditioned to recognize love only when it comes in big, obvious ways. Through flowers, grand gestures, romantic getaways, or the classic "I love you." But that's not how most men operate when they're truly in love. A man's language of love is often hidden in simplicity. When a man loves a woman madly, he doesn't always declare it in poetic verses or long emotional confessions. Instead, he speaks in phrases that might seem ordinary on the surface but are packed with meaning if you listen closely. These phrases aren't always loud or dramatic. They're quiet, intentional, and often go unnoticed because they don't look like what we expect from romantic love. The truth is, men are often taught to be providers, protectors, problem solvers. And because of that, many men communicate their deepest feelings not with heart-melting speeches, but with short, powerful phrases that hint at a deeper emotional current. Hoping to be seen, not heard. Women desperately draw. He may not say, "I adore you with all my soul," but he might say, "Text me when you get home." And that's not just concern, it's love in disguise. He's thinking about your safety. He's still connected to you even after you've walked away. He doesn't say it to every woman. That little sentence is a fingerprint of his emotional investment. A man who's madly in love often feels things more intensely than he shows. His words are filtered through the lens of how he was raised, what he was taught about masculinity, and how vulnerable he feels safe enough to be. So when he says something like, "I want you to be okay," or "Are you sure you're all right?" it might not sound like love, but to him, it's one of the few ways he knows how to show it. He's trying to care for her emotionally, even if he can't quite find the perfect words. What's important to understand is that these phrases often slip by unnoticed. They don't come wrapped in roses or accompanied by candlelight. They might be said over dinner, during a casual conversation, or in the middle of a stressful day, but they matter. They're the quiet proofs of love that aren't trying to perform, they're just real, and most people miss them because they're too busy waiting for something louder. But if you pay attention to the quiet phrases, the understated remarks, the little protective or thoughtful statements, that's where the truth lives. That's where you find the difference between someone who's interested and someone who's emotionally invested on a deep level. A man doesn't say these things to just anyone. He says them when he's already chosen her in his heart, long before he's made a public declaration. When a man is madly in love, one of the clearest but most misunderstood signs is the way he allows himself to be emotionally vulnerable. This doesn't always come out in tearful confessions or dramatic declarations. Most of the time it's far more subtle than that. He may not say, "I'm scared of losing you," but he might say, "I've never felt this way before," or "You mess me up in the best way." And in that moment, he's opening the door to a part of himself that most people never get to see. That's emotional intimacy, and it's rare. It's not casual. He doesn't give that side of himself away easily because for a lot of men, letting their guard down isn't something they're encouraged to do. They've been taught to stay composed, to stay in control, and to never show their softer side unless they fully trust the person in front of them. That's why these phrases matter. When a man uses language that reveals emotional uncertainty, inner conflict, or deep sentiment, especially in relation to a woman, he's not being weak. He's actually showing her that she's entered a space in his life that few ever reach. He may joke and laugh with many, but if he says something like, "I don't know what I'd do if you weren't in my life," or even just, "I've never said this to anyone else," he's showing his heart, not his humor, and he doesn't do that unless it's real. These are the moments where he pulls back the curtain and lets her see the version of himself that he usually keeps hidden. A man's emotional vulnerability often doesn't look like what you'd expect. It's not always about sharing childhood trauma or crying during serious talks. Sometimes it's as simple as him admitting he's confused or scared or unsure. That might look like him asking, "Do you really care about me?" or saying, "I don't want to mess this up." Those aren't just words. Those are emotional checkpoints. They tell you he's not just in this casually. He's emotionally invested and uncertain because now it matters. Love has made him feel exposed in a way that both excites and terrifies him. And here's what's powerful. Men don't share these things unless they feel safe. So if he's saying them to you, you've become his emotional home. You're the one person he trusts enough to lower his shield. And that kind of openness is not just love, it's raw, unfiltered trust. It's the kind of closeness that doesn't come from physical attraction or fun dates. It comes from emotional depth. And when a man loves like that, it's not something temporary. It's the kind of love that changes how he sees the world, and more importantly, how he sees you. Love isn't always wrapped in obvious phrases like, "I love you," or "I can't live without you." In fact, the way a man speaks when he's deeply in love can be so subtle that most people don't even notice it. But if you pay close attention, the truth is hidden in the way he checks in, the way he talks about the future, and the way he uses language to include someone else in his world. When a man is madly in love, his words begin to carry weight. He'll say things like, "How was your day?" or "Did you eat?" or "Let me know when you get home." And while those phrases might sound routine or simple, they're actually signs of emotional presence. He's not just being polite, he's attaching himself to her experience. He's showing care, not in a performative way. When a man loves a woman deeply, he thinks about her even when he's not with her. That's why his language starts to reflect a natural concern for her well-being. If he's asking questions that seem small, it's because he's trying to stay connected to her life. He wants to know what's going on in her world, not out of noisiness, but because he emotionally exists there. It's no longer about me and you. He begins to think in terms of us. That mental shift might come out in tiny phrases like, "What are we doing this weekend?" or "Should we try that new place together?" These are not random suggestions. They are clues that he is mentally picturing a future with her in it, even in the most ordinary moments. Most people overlook these subtle shifts because they're used to chasing fireworks. But love doesn't always come with explosions. Sometimes it comes in whispers. A man in love won't always shout it from the rooftops. Instead, he'll talk about her dreams as if they're his own. He'll say things like, "You've got this," or "I believe in you." And those words aren't just encouragement, they're emotional investment. He's no longer watching her from the outside. He's on her team. He's seeing her challenges and victories as part of his life too. That's a level of intimacy that's deeper than 100 "I love yous." Even when he makes plans, you'll hear the difference. He'll start asking what she wants to do, not because he's unsure, but because her opinion now matters. Her happiness now matters. And those tiny details, those little moments where he considers her in his choices, that's love speaking. It's not flashy, but it's real. Love has a way of sneaking into everyday language, and when a man is deeply in it, you'll hear it in the smallest phrases, the ones most people miss because they're looking for something bigger. But the truth is, when love is real, it shows up in the quietest ways. When a man is madly in love, his words begin to shift from simply being affectionate to being deeply relational. This means that what he says isn't just about how he feels, it's about how he sees her fitting into his life in a lasting, meaningful way. The phrases he uses in these moments might not be traditionally romantic, but they carry the weight of something much more powerful. For instance, when he says, "Call me if anything happens," or "Let me know if you need anything," he's not just offering help, he's stepping into the role of protector and partner. These kinds of phrases often go unnoticed because they sound like things any decent person would say, but when a man repeats them consistently and with sincerity, they signal a deeper emotional investment. A man who is deeply in love doesn't just talk about love. He talks about her dreams, her safety, her stress levels, and her needs. He listens more closely. He tunes into the unspoken. His language reflects an emotional partnership, not just emotional attraction. You might hear him say things like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," or "You don't have to go through this alone." These aren't just comforting words, they are verbal signs of commitment. He takes care of you not just because you're a man, but because you are emotional. This is what men like. We are so fortunate. They are verbal signs of commitment. He's not only present when it's fun or convenient, he's choosing to be available when it's hard or uncertain. And that's the difference between loving someone and being madly in love with them. When her problems become his problems, and her peace becomes something he prioritizes with quiet but steady effort. This kind of love doesn't show itself through constant compliments or sweet nothings whispered late at night. Instead, it hides in everyday dialogue. It shows up in planning, in remembering details, in asking follow-up questions that prove he was paying attention. If she once mentioned she had an important presentation, and days later he says, "How did it go?" That's love paying attention. When a man loves this way, he's not trying to impress her anymore. He's already chosen her, and now his words are trying to support her. He speaks like someone who sees himself not just as a romantic interest, but as a true companion. And while these phrases may lack drama or poetic charm, they're honest. They're not crafted to impress. They're said in real time, in the real world, where real love lives. He'll say things like, "I want you to be happy," or "You matter to me more than you know." And while they might not be shouted in the rain or written in a love letter, they're just as powerful, maybe even more so. Because when a man speaks like this, it's not just about emotion. It's about partnership. It's about staying. It's about choosing someone not just with passion, but with patience, care, and the kind of steady presence that builds real, lasting love. One of the most overlooked shifts that happens when a man falls madly in love is the way he subtly changes how he talks about life. At first he might speak from a place of independence, saying things like, "I want," "I'm going," "my plans." But as his feelings deepen, his language starts to shift toward inclusion. It's no longer just about him, it becomes about we, us, and ours. These small changes in phrasing carry a huge emotional meaning. They show that, consciously or not, he's beginning to picture her as part of his world, his decisions, and even his future. This transition rarely happens all at once. It sneaks in gradually, almost invisibly. One day it's my apartment, and the next, without realizing it, he says our place, when referring to something they haven't even shared yet. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's the heart speaking ahead of the mind. When a man begins to use shared language, he's no longer seeing the relationship as something temporary or recreational. He's beginning to build a life in his mind that includes her in it. He doesn't say, I'm going to this event. He asks, do you want to come with me? He doesn't say, I'm thinking of getting away for the weekend. He says, we should take a break together. These might sound like small things, but they're actually massive signs of emotional investment. They mean that she's not just a girlfriend or someone he's dating. She's become someone he sees himself moving forward with. He's creating a life that includes her by default. This kind of language shift shows up even in planning small moments. He may ask, what should we eat? Or say, we haven't been there in a while, even if they've only gone once. The we becomes part of how he thinks, speaks, and dreams. His identity is still intact, but he's no longer only thinking in singular terms. He's building something that feels shared, even if he doesn't make a grand speech about it. And here's where it becomes even more meaningful. He doesn't realize he's doing it. So that's how you know it's real. He's not saying these things to prove a point or win affection. His words are a reflection of how deeply she's embedded herself in his thoughts and his emotional world. These phrases are powerful, not because they're loud, but because they're natural. When a man starts saying we without thinking, that's love that's rooted, not rehearsed. He's no longer trying to keep his world separate. He's blending hers into it, naturally, gradually, with language that feels comfortable and real. That kind of language comes from a man who isn't just in love. He's already living as if they're together, in every way that counts. When a man is deeply, madly in love, it doesn't always show up in the moments everyone expects. It's not always in the big anniversary surprises, the grand romantic statements, or the perfectly timed kisses. The reminder that these days are also the most perfect passion, partnership, production, conflict resolution, and correction from man and woman. Without it, life is unfulfilling. It's not happening. The anxieties that come with it cannot be counted, and the state of being full of loss becomes untamably beautiful. And then all the insanity, more often than not, real love shows up in the small in-between moments, the ones that don't get posted, don't get praised, and don't seem like anything special to anyone else. But in those quiet places, a man reveals what he truly feels. These are the moments where he could just stay silent or give a generic response, but instead he says something that reflects how deeply he sees her, how much he values her, and how invested he is in her well-being, her growth, and her heart. It might be a Tuesday night when she's drained from a long day, and instead of simply asking if she's okay, he tells her, I know you're strong, but you don't have to carry everything alone. That one line may not sound poetic, but it holds emotional weight. It says, I see you. It says, you don't have to pretend around me. That's love. That's deep, unspoken emotional intimacy. The kind that doesn't perform, but quietly proves itself. Or maybe she's doubting herself, second-guessing a choice, or feeling overwhelmed. And in that moment, instead of brushing it off or giving advice, he says, I trust you. You always find a way. Those words don't just show belief in her. They show that he pays attention to who she is, not just what she does. This is what many people miss. A man in love doesn't always speak in grand declarations. He speaks in grounded reassurance, in consistency, in small observations that prove he's not just watching her, he's understanding her. When he says, I like who you are when no one's looking, he's telling her that he's fallen for her essence, not just her image. When he tells her, you make things feel lighter, he's acknowledging the emotional impact she has on his life, even in ways she probably doesn't realize. That's the kind of love that runs deep, the kind that stays even when things aren't picture perfect. These are the phrases that don't get applause from the outside world, but they change the way she breathes. They bring her a sense of safety, of partnership, of being truly seen. And here's the truth. A man doesn't say these kinds of things unless his heart is all the way in. Because when a man loves like this, his ego steps back. His need to appear tough or distant fades. He starts to show care in moments that don't benefit him, in times where no one else would notice, in ways that are easy to overlook but impossible to fake. Even something as simple as, I was thinking about what you said yesterday, reveals that he listens with his heart, not just his ears. He's not just going through the motions of a relationship, he's emotionally engaged. He's showing her that her words matter, that her presence lingers, that she's become part of the way he processes the world. That doesn't happen casually. That's the kind of love that is built slowly and often silently, through acts of emotional attentiveness that don't need to be flashy to be profound. The beauty of these moments is that they are so often missed by others, and sometimes even by the woman herself. But when she begins to really hear what he's saying in the silence, in the in-between, in the non-glamorous spaces, that's when she realizes the depth of his love. Because it's in those quiet corners that the most honest version of him lives. And that version doesn't speak to impress. It speaks because it's already chosen her. So when you're wondering whether a man truly loves you, not just likes you, not just wants you, but loves you madly, don't just listen for the loud declarations. Pay attention to the quiet phrases, the small shifts in language, the subtle ways he includes you in his thoughts, his plans, and his emotional world. Real love often hides in the sentences that sound ordinary to everyone else, but feel different when he says them to you. It's in the way he asks if you're okay, the way he says we instead of me, the way he offers support without being asked, and the way his words make you feel safe without ever needing a spotlight. These phrases aren't scripted. They're felt. And a man doesn't say them to just anyone. He says them to the woman who's become more than a chapter in his life. She's become the story he wants to write.